We often think about organized crime, through certain familiar images, maybe Italian mobsters or something, but really it's a much more varied landscape out there.
Definitely. And today we're diving into a part of it that maybe doesn't get as much airtime: Greek organized crime.
Right. And when we say Greek mafia, we should be clear. It's not like one single organization, is it?
No, not at all. It's more like an umbrella term. Think maybe like the French Le Milieu or the Dutch Pinots. It covers various groups, often interconnected, but definitely distinct.
Okay. So you've been looking into this using the Greek Mafia Merge.pdf document, which covers quite a bit, right? Domestic groups, Philly, New York.
Exactly. That's the source material for this deep dive. It pulls together info on crime within Greece, but also the Philadelphia Greek mob and the Valences organization in New York.
So the mission today is really to pull out, what defines these groups? What do they do? And how far does their reach go inside Greece and out, especially those U.S. groups?
Yeah, let's try and piece together that picture. So maybe starting with the basics. What do we even call it, and what does it look like structurally?
Okay, good starting point. The term Greek mafia itself is that common.
It is, yeah. You even see Greek news outlets using the English term sometimes. The actual Greek term is Elleniki Mafia.
Elleniki mafia.
Yeah.
Got it. And structure-wise, you said it's not one big thing.
Right. Domestically, in Greece, it's typically made up of smaller cells, often family-based. It's quite different from, say, the Sicilian mafia's hierarchy, or even some Albanian groups. These Greek cells aren't necessarily taking orders from one big boss.
So more like a loose network, lots of players.
Pretty much. They might cooperate sometimes, for a specific job, but they also feud with each other. The source we're looking at estimates something like 217 known domestic crime lords operating in Greece.
217. Wow. That really underscores the decentralized point.
It does. And you also hear this term, godfathers of the night, pneuma tis nuktas in Greek.
Godfathers of the night. What's the significance there?
Well, it's interesting. They're often linked to owning nightclubs.
Ah, okay. So the club is maybe a front or a base of operations.
Could be both. A place to meet, make deals, maybe wash some money, certainly project influence.
Makes sense. So beyond running clubs, what kind of activities are these godfathers and their networks actually involved in? What's the bread and butter?
It's a pretty wide range, actually. Racketeering is definitely in their, extortion, protection rackets.
Standard stuff for organized crime.
Yeah, but also quite specific things like illegal oil smuggling. Greece has a huge coastline, lots of islands, so that presents opportunities.
Oil smuggling. Okay, didn't see that one coming. What else?
Money laundering, obviously. Cigarette smuggling is big. Weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, especially marijuana and hashish. And then the heavier stuff, too. Kidnapping, even murder.
And are they doing this all on their own, or are they mixing with other groups?
No, they definitely collaborate. The source mentions working with Albanian, Romanian, and Serbian mafia groups that are also active inside Greece.
Why would they team up like that?
Well, it can be strategic, right? Pool resources. Maybe one group is better at sourcing something, another at distributing it. Access different networks. Plus, sadly, the text also points to corrupt officials being involved, which makes things easier for all these groups.
Right. Corruption always greases the wheels,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Okay, so that's the picture inside Greece. But you mentioned international reach. How far does that extend?
Pretty far, actually. Across Europe, North America, Africa, Asia, even Australia, there's a global presence.
How do they manage that?
Eh.
Especially the smuggling side.
A key factor is Greece's massive merchant shipping industry. It's one of the biggest in the world. That provides a lot of cover for moving illicit goods.
Using legitimate infrastructure for illegitimate purposes.
Exactly, especially for drug trafficking. The source mentions marijuana grown in places like Crete and the Peloponnese being shipped out to Europe this way.
And where's it mostly going? Any specific hotspots?
The Netherlands comes up specifically.
Why the Netherlands?
Seems like a combination of things. Their drug tolerance policies, especially around cannabis, create a ready market. And Rotterdam has a huge port, massive shipping infrastructure, making it a good entry point.
So the very thing that helps Greek shipping also helps Greek crime go international.
Pretty much. And it's mentioned that the decentralized nature of these Greek groups can actually make it harder for law enforcement to prosecute. It's not like taking down one kingpin shuts down the whole network.
Interesting point. That lack of hierarchy is a double-edged sword. Okay, let's pivot now to North America. The source talks about the Philadelphia Greek mob. What's their story?
Yeah, the Philly group. It's described as a more loose-knit faction, primarily Greek Americans involved in racketeering, drug dealing, that sort of thing.
Operating mainly in Philly.
Philly, yeah, but also apparently dipping into South Jersey, Baltimore, even D.C. a bit. But the really key thing about them is their relationship with the Italian-American mob there.
How so?
They were closely affiliated with and eventually kind of absorbed by the Philadelphia crime family, particularly when Nicky Scarfo was the boss.
So they weren't really independent for long. More like a crew under the Italians?
Seems like it, especially later on. Though back in the 70s, there was this figure, Chelsea's Boras, Steve Boras. He apparently ran a pretty big network of Greek-American gangsters.
Steve Boras. And he was independent.
Well, yes and no. He controlled a big slice of the drug market, particularly meth, but he operated under the protection of the Philly family boss at the time, Angelo Bruno.
Ah, the gentle dawn. Okay, so Boras was into drugs. What else?
The usual suspects: loan sharking, extortion, illegal gambling. The source says he had a working relationship with Italian mob figures, including Raymond Martirano, who was a soldier in Scarfo's crew later.
But things didn't end well for Boras, did they? There's a pretty dramatic assassination mentioned.
No, they didn't. May 1981. Boris and his girlfriend, Shanette Curro, were gunned down while eating dinner at a Greek restaurant, Venetus, in South Philly.
Who was responsible?
Well, the report suggests Nicky Scarfo ordered the hit. Apparently, Boris refused to pay Scarfo street tax on his meth operation. And Martirano, who was actually dining with Boris when it happened, is speculated to have maybe helped set it up.
Well, dining with him, that's cold. Yeah.
And interestingly, the girlfriend, Jeanette Curro, her family also had ties to the Philly Cosa Nostra. And just the day before Boris got hit, another Greek mobster, Harry Petros, was also murdered. So it was a messy situation.
Sounds incredibly messy. What happened to the Greek mob in Philly after Boris was gone?
Their influence seems to have really faded after that, especially with the brutal mob wars that tore through Philly in the 80s. They apparently tried to get into the Atlantic City casino rackets around then, and the FBI busted a cocaine ring they were running across a few cities in the late 80s.
But basically, they became less of a distinct force?
Yeah, largely faded from view as a cohesive group, though individuals might still be around. The source mentions some loan sharking activity linked to former members more recently, but not on the same scale.
Okay, so a significant chapter, but maybe one that got overshadowed by the larger Italian mob conflicts there. Let's hop over to New York City then. The Valences organization. Sounds more distinct.
It does seem that way. Also called the Greek Crew, they were mainly based out in Astoria, Queens.
Story, a big Greek community there.
Exactly. Its origins trace back to a group called the Kourakos clan, led by a Pete the Great Kourakos. But it really became a force in the 80s under Spiridon Valences, or Spiro the Greek.
Spiro Valences. And what was his main game in New York?
Primarily illegal gambling. He apparently built up quite an operation in Astoria, controlling dice games, horse racing parlors, general gambling rackets. By the late 80s, it sounds like he had a pretty significant network across Queens and even into Brooklyn.
That's serious money. How did he manage that in New York? With the 5 families controlling so much, did he run into trouble or make alliances?
Both, actually. He had a very important relationship with Christopher Furnari, Christy Tick, who was the consigliere for the Lutez crime family.
Ah, a powerful ally.
Very. Fornar basically gave Spiro protection, allowed him to operate in return for a slice of those gambling profits. It was mutually beneficial.
The conflicts, too.
Oh yeah, particularly with the Gambino family. John Gotti himself was apparently caught on FBI wiretaps threatening to wax Spiro because he felt Valences was moving in on Gambino territory.
Going up against Gotti, it takes guts or maybe foolishness.
It definitely shows the kind of high-stakes environment he was operating in.
So what happened to Spiro Valences in the end? Did he get whacked?
No, the law caught up with him. In 1992, he was convicted. Big charges.
Yeah.
Murder, loan sharking, gambling, tax fraud. He got a life sentence specifically for ordering the murder of someone called Saracho Sammy the Arab Nalo.
And who carried out the hit?
He actually contracted it out to Luci's soldiers, which shows how intertwined things were.
Wow. And Valences.
He stayed in prison until he died, which was actually very recently, May 2024, according to the source.
Okay, so with Spiro locked up for life, did the organization just collapse?
Not immediately. Leadership apparently passed to a guy named Fotios Dimopoulos in the late 90s. He kept the gambling rackets going in Astoria, still under that Lucis umbrella.
But things change, right? New groups emerge.
Exactly. They then faced a major challenge from a newer player on the scene, the Albanian Rudaj organization. The Rudos group tried to muscle in, extort Demopulos, take over the gambling. This led to some serious conflict, back and forth violence.
How did that end?
It basically lasted until the leaders of the Rudash organization got locked up themselves around 2004.
So it's a constant struggle for territory and control. Okay, we have these two quite different stories in the U.S. Philly more integrated, New York more independent, but still needing alliances. Looking back at everything Greece, the U.S. examples, what are the main threads? The key characteristics of Greek organized crime.
Well, that tendency towards smaller, often family-based units, especially in Greece itself, seems like a core trait, less of that rigid top-down structure you see elsewhere.
Right, and adaptability.
Definitely adaptability. And a willingness or maybe necessity to work with other ethnic crime groups. We saw that in Greece with the Albanians and others, and in the U.S. with the Italian families.
Any key differences that stand out, maybe compared to other mafias?
The source does contrast them a bit. It suggests Greek groups focus heavily on smuggling drugs, oil, cigarettes, leveraging that maritime connection, whereas, say, the Italian Camorra might rely more traditionally on extortion and racketeering within a defined territory.
That makes sense. And it's not always about groups called Greek mafia, right? Sometimes individuals pop up in other organizations.
Absolutely. Gus Alex in the Chicago outfit is a huge example, a Greek-American rising incredibly high in an Italian-American organization. Then you have guys like Michael Thieves, another Greek-American gangster linked to multiple Italian families, known for being extremely violent.
So the lines can be blurry.
Very blurry, and the reach keeps expanding. The source even mentions Greek crime syndicates running casinos in Africa and organized crime within Greek communities in Australia and Cyprus. It's truly global.
It really is a complex web. Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive into Greek organized crime?
I think, number one, the decentralized nature within Greece itself, those numerous godfathers of the night. Number two, their significant international reach, powered largely by maritime smuggling. And number three, the distinct histories in North America, Philly's integration versus New York's relative autonomy within the larger underworld ecosystem.
Yeah, really fascinating how those dynamics played out differently. It leaves you thinking, doesn't it? With crime becoming so globalized and these groups being so adaptable, how are they going to evolve next?
Right. As international law enforcement tries to cooperate more and the world keeps changing politically and economically, what new challenges will these groups face? But also, what new opportunities might open up for them?
Definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
How does a decentralized, adaptable network like that navigate the modern world? Something to keep pondering.